Listen, you have no idea how thankful I am. I have a little bit of slice of that history. It's been for sure one of the most incredible, you know, experiences I've ever had. And at the same time, it's incredible, what I would say, conversation starter, right? So it's always
Yeah.
been so great to, because it's amazing how that brand, the Pink Floyd brand, how what it means worldwide. It's just massive. It's crazy.
Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Christina Rahm, and this is the Dr. Rahm Show. And we only have people on this show that are world leaders, such as prime ministers, presidents, sheikhs, or very influential people in the music art industry. I always say this to people, your creatives are really the people in your life and in our countries that really change and make the difference. When you lose the creatives, you lose the aspect of humanity where we're really trying to touch what we are at the core of being human. And I really believe that, and you can study it historically. So today I have an amazing, amazing creator and talented musician, Scott Page, who is very famous for being on Pink Floyd, as well as I think Toto and a lot of other
Mm,
bands. So I'm going to let him introduce
thank
himself. I
you.
have to, I love your art, by the way. So you're not just
Ooh.
creative when it comes to music. I know you must be an artist or love music as well, or I mean art as well.
Well, I love, I love anything in the creative process. It's fascinating. And actually, I have a big project we can talk a little bit about, which is the
Love
stuff
to.
that we put on the moon on February 22nd last year. We landed on the moon. I put 7,000 digital twins up there. And these are some of the things, my big angel of now, which is the presence angel. It's about, my favorite subject, consciousness. And then the second thing is the golden mullet, which is that over there, which is the piece I put on the moon. But what's unique about it is its business model. It's actually a decentralized finance piece of art and also a circular economy. And it's a whole thing around Web3 and tokenization and sort of my second favorite subject, which is tokens are about to eat the world. And I love all this stuff. So anyway, I'm very happy to be here. I've heard a lot about you through our friend Dustin, which is great. And he basically raved and he said, "Oh, you got to do this." So I'm so happy to meet you.
Well, thank
Happy.
you. It's nice to meet you too. And I by the way, I understand the whole metaverse and tokens because I've worked with Dustin on that. So
Okay,
we're
great.
really big into that as well. And then Jessica and Lori, the ward, all those people that I've been involved in, I know they all sent things to the moon. I think we did some stuff with Dustin then as well. So it's
Nice.
amazing. I didn't send as many things as you did or do as many things as you've done, but I'm with you. I think the tokens are going to change the way we really do business. And it's been
Yep.
interesting, Scott, because I've worked in 92 countries, predominantly as a scientist and then a humanitarian. But my mother, just so you know, is a musician. She's a classical pianist and cellist.
Ooh,
And
nice.
two of my children are musicians, and I live in Nashville, Tennessee. So, of course, I'm around a lot of that. Maybe they're not all as famous as you because you literally being in Pink Floyd and that band is the pinnacle, I'm sure, for anyone's career as far as it pertains to music.
Yeah, it is. It is. Listen, you have no idea how thankful I am. I have a little bit of slice of that history. It's been for sure one of the most incredible, you know, experiences I've ever had. And at the same time, it's incredible, what I would say, conversation starter, right? So it's always
Yeah.
been so great to, because it's amazing how that brand, the Pink Floyd brand, how what it means worldwide. It's just massive. It's crazy. It's
Oh,
been
it's
going on.
massive.
It's still to this day. It still feels like it was no different than when I was playing with them. Even now, the brand is still so powerful. So yeah, very thankful for that. To be truthful, yeah, it's been a great opportunity and just an incredible. I don't know how that happened. 8 billion people, and how did that happen to me? right?
Well,
That's
I
amazing.
think that it's bigger than you. You know, I tell people all the time, I used to be an artist and I ended up having a brain tumor and Lyme
Mm.
disease and cancer. I lost a child and then another child with cancer, and it changed my life. I kind of pivoted from the arts to
Wow.
science, but I used that to go back to school, and I used my creativity in the science space to create a lot of patents and products where I take the GMOs and the toxins and the heavy metals out, and then ended up really, that's why I'm in so many countries. I work with governments. I work with different
Wow.
organizations like the Vatican, like the Science Pontification Academy with Destin. That's one of the reasons we know each other. But I really was
Mhm.
like, how did this happen? And my answer is, I didn't really do anything. I don't know how you feel about it, but I'm like, sometimes the universe just comes in and takes care of it for you. Do you feel like that's how it
Well, I
was with
wouldn't even
you?
say sometimes. I would say all the time. It does. You know,
Yeah.
for me, it
Yeah.
just everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, and like I said, consciousness is my favorite subject of all subjects. It's the thing I care most about. It's actually the only thing I really care about, to be honest. It's the most important ride you'll ever take is that inward journey because inner peace is really the holy grail, right? I mean,
It
if
is
you're
the Holy
peaceful,
Grail.
that's what you're looking for. And once you
Yeah.
start to realize that, I try to explain this to everybody. The only thing that's real is you and me talking right now,
That's so
right? That's it.
true. That's
Five
true.
minutes ago, it's an
Mm-mm.
illusion. Five
Yeah.
minutes from now is an illusion. So this step
Yeah.
is the only one that matters, and that's what that angel's all about. Is right. Is the presence angel? It's the angel of now, right? And it's just the whole idea is once people learn to basically be aware, stay and be aware. They call it awareness. If you look at all these, it's about
Yeah.
being hyper aware. The problem is how do I know I'm aware that I'm aware? That's that's the puzzle to solve because our
Yeah.
minds and our egos will make us, oh, I'm aware and everything, and
Yeah.
make you believe these things when in
Yeah.
reality you're totally asleep and you don't realize it. So that
Yeah.
that 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 whole process for me is the most important thing. And I think our whole job, everything we do is about helping consciousness unfold. That's your job, my job, everybody I know.
Absolutely.
And again,
Absolutely. I love that you're even saying this because, like, for me, you know, as a Destin may or may not have explained this, I went back and I studied nanobiotechnology, not to create GMOs or the nuclear bomb, but to
right,
try to erase some of that from our lives. And through all of that, of course, I was exposed to so many projects where we understand that now, you know, even you and I on this call, our cells are exchanging energy, and you
yeah,
have to be in that moment in order for that to take place, and you have to understand what's going on. And I feel like so many times we lose that moment by worrying about everything. And I think probably one of my biggest gifts, I have a lot of flaws, but one of my biggest gifts is I am in that moment. If I'm there, that's all I'm
yeah.
focused on.
You know,
And
that's
that's,
that, that's such a gift. I mean, really, I mean, the one person that really made me look at the world differently, and not because of what they said or what they did, but just the way their presence was. I was fortunate enough to have a business with Quincy Jones, right?
yeah,
And
right.
Q had this incredible power. I learned from him that whoever he talked to, you were the only person in the room at that moment. It didn't matter if you were the gardener or if you were the guy
Yeah,
working waiting the table or whatever. His undivided attention was on you at so deep because you could look in his eyes. You could see there's nothing else going on in his head other than having this conversation with you. And when I felt that, and I realized that was probably one of the greatest gifts because giving somebody your attention, like fully
yeah,
attention,
full
is
attention.
so powerful, right? And
When was that, Scott? How long ago was that when that happened to you?
Quincy, that was back. Yeah, that started in '90. I guess I was Quincy was '90. I guess '93, '94, '95, '93, '94, '95 is when I had that business with. And that was where I realized. And then when I started taking a really heavy spiritual path, I ended up reading The Power of Now 60 times in a row.
It's
I
a great book.
listened to
Yeah.
that in my car for 2 years. Every time you heard it, it was
Yeah.
deeper. It got better. It changes every time, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, basically was what I at that time, I didn't really understand what was going on in the same way that I did once I took that path. And then I started to realize that was the magic, was that being fully aware and fully attentive. So that got carried over as I started taking that path. Then I started to go, aha, I see how this is now, how this is, and how this works. And I mean, it's the greatest gift. I mean, I love people. I love to talk to people. Like I'll talk with everybody, right? I don't care who it
Yeah.
is, what it is. I mean, because remember, that's the only thing that's real. So if
At
you
that moment.
want to
Yeah.
make that the highest level, that's why every step I take is I almost, it almost feels like this. The past to me now has gotten to the point where, those guys that run those cartoons where they're running on a bridge and the bridge
Yeah.
keeps collapsing behind them. That's how I
Yep.
view the past. Every time I take a step, it's just like that just goes away now. Because it has no value.
Yeah.
There's nothing real about it. It's all just a thing. Now I can ruminate on it, think about it, but I know not to attach to it, because that's
Right.
where all our
Right.
suffering comes from. We
Oh,
suffer because
yeah.
we attach to the illusions that are our head. Because I could
So
be
true.
suffering right now like crazy, yet I'm just sitting here talking to you. There's no lion chasing me. There's nothing going on but what I identify with, my thoughts, right? So I
Right.
teach one of the great things that I learned that gave me the insights. Just I'll throw this out because in case somebody listens to it and cares about taking this
They
inward
will.
journey. Uh,
Yeah.
is I read in this book once, it said, as often as you can throughout the day, stop yourself wherever you are, put all your attention where you are. Like right now, I'm sitting in my living room, right? And then ask this question: what are you feeling right now? Are you feeling any anxiety, tension, or fear? If I'm feeling any anxiety, tension, or fear, and I'm sitting here talking to you, unless there's a lion chasing me or something, I know I'm identified with a thought, not
Yeah.
reality, right?
Yeah.
And so every time you ask that question, you actually wake up a little bit because you stop and you take a little examination. And then you realize I'm sitting in this room, but I'm like, oh, I can't sleep. I'm freaking out. I'm freaking out. Right? Why am I freaking out? Because of the thought. Now, that doesn't mean that those things aren't things you have to deal with. The goal is not to say that those we don't have challenges, and we don't. It's how we react to those challenges. Do we let take us over where we become complete, like, or do I just like examine it, learn with it, go it, accept what is? Because that's the holy grail of life, is learning to
Yeah.
accept what is, because you cannot change what is.
You can't change what
You
is.
cannot change it. That is a
I love
feeling.
this. So I'm going to learn from you today. I love this because so you don't know this, but my first doctorate degree was psychology, but I
Okay.
have this horrible fear of, and now I'm a scientist, but I have a horrible fear of flying. And I fly constantly. Dustin
Mm,
knows I was home 70 days, I think, last year. I'm always in all these other countries.
wow.
I can't get over that fear. And of course, as a psychologist, you're thinking, well, try hypnosis or try this. So one of the things, what is your greatest fear, by the way?
Boy, that's a good question. My greatest fear. Wow. I don't really, I don't, you know, I'm not, I don't really know. I've never really thought about anything like,
The
I don't,
only reason I know about this fear is because I'm on a plane and my heart starts. But what I do is
right,
very similar to what you're talking about. The only thing that's worked for me is to realize, okay, I'm in this moment. I'm on this plane. Can I
right.
control what's happening? Is this an unfounded fear, or should I focus on the person next to me or work? So what I do is I try to focus on what I think is a great focus, like me accomplishing a patent, right? That will help, which is because I'm sure you know this. I have to be fully present to write a patent, right? I can't be distracted by fear. I've got to so that's what I've tried to do, but I think you might be able to teach me something that's better.
Well,
'Cause I
I mean, the
don't-
main thing is just to know that inside of everything, no matter what the situation, how horrible it is, there's a seed of grace, right? So the opportunity is this fear is what actually gives you the opportunity to drive you inward, because you start examining, why am I fearful? What's going on? Well, you start at least doing that self-examination, and just like I always try to have inside, I don't care what it is, how horrible the situation, what it is. If you look deep enough, there is a seed of grace. Because don't forget, you blink,
Right.
you're 50, you blink, you're on your deathbed. Time
Yeah.
is a complete illusion.
Oh
It's
yeah,
a complete
100%.
illusion. I mean, yeah, I woke up on April 9th, 10, 12. I always tell this story. April 9th, 10, 12, 2011. I wake up in the morning and I rub my eyes, and in my room, there's my, dresser. And then above the dresser is a mirror. And I look in the mirror and I see myself. And I went, oh, I blinked and 50 years went by. I went, oh, how did that even happen? And that's when I understood, not understood, but I knew what the great mystics, the great avatars, the great teachers, all of
Yeah,
those stuff talk about when they talk about time being an illusion,
yeah,
because it truly is. There is remember what we've learned now because of quantum mechanics and everything is that the past, the present, the future all happen at the
they
same
do. They do.
intersection of now.
Yeah,
It's all
yeah,
happening right now, right?
yeah.
Everything else is just noise, stuff we make in our heads up, visions. That's why, when you look at all this suffering is like, people put, oh, I'm going to be this. This is my goal. Oh, I'm all excited. Then all of a sudden things start to veer and it doesn't happen. Then it's despair, despair, the goal. So suffering is there where when you realize it, the only step that matters is if I can keep my vibration, if I can keep on top of being up. Every time I take a step, how am I feeling? Where am I at right now? I'm standing here. Everything's okay. Everything's okay. You start to flip where you become the watcher and not the thinker, right? Because now you
Right.
start to watch your thoughts. That's like the first inkling. Once you can start to shift that thinking, that's the first part of this sort of awakening. Because then you start to watch your thoughts, and then you start watching yourself in situations, and you start observing yourself. You go, you're a nut. It was like, for me, it was like charity events. I used to do charity events years ago, right?
Yeah.
And until I realized the reason I was doing those charity events was for me. It was my ego. It
Yeah.
wasn't about the charity. It was about the ego of like, oh, I'm doing good. I feel good. I'm going to look good in front of people. It wasn't until I started to realize that that was about me, not about the thing. I started observing, and to the point, and I started going, as I'm watching myself in these meetings and stuff, and I'm looking at myself going, why am I saying this? Why am I doing these type of things? I realized I was a nut. I was insane. I'm a nut. And that's why I love out of the Bible. It was one of the great sayings is forgive for they know not what they do.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
And that's
Oh
like
yeah.
one of the most powerful, profound statements because everybody's walking around in a
They
movie.
don't know.
Right?
Yeah.
They're just like out, they've got their whole world, their whole lane, they can see. And then with these dang phones, right? The things we have in our heads, it's even worse. It takes us
It's
away
worse.
from reality and puts us into a
Yeah.
freaking crazy state. But yeah, once you
Well,
start to
the Bible
really
also says, Scott, we will be judged according to what we know. So when
Mhm.
you're evolved, like where you are, where you spent time really understanding, you're at this level where everything you're doing, and I have to be honest, I always feel this, okay, I understand a lot of the things you're saying. I agree with 100% because nanotechnologist or quantum physicist, right? And
Right.
so I used to talk about this about yesterday, today, tomorrow, and how the string theory and the black hole. And people would look at me like I was a nut. And I was like, these are actual facts. This is
Yeah.
actual reality. Of course, I'm going to tell you, Scott, people probably thought she's crazy. No, it isn't. But yeah, for me, it is, it's always been because it's my area of expertise. It's my area of focus, right? So the more I started understanding that, the more I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to be an example of consciousness and of that moment to other people that maybe haven't reached that, or maybe they're better than they've learned more than me, but I at least have to continue that journey because
Right.
you're absolutely right. Every single thing is connected, and it's our illusion in our mind that sees it differently, right? Because
Yeah.
we're not
Right.
able to connect that. We're just not able to. It's
Yeah.
well, I'm sure some people are. I am not completely. I do understand that there's a lot of things that I know that I have no idea why I know, like scientifically. And you would
Right.
say, well, you probably learned that in school. My answer is no, I didn't. I just know. And so I lean upon the fact that that was something that was taught to me before or after
Hmm.
or somewhere else that I don't understand. And that's something I've learned to accept about my life.
Yeah. Wow. Fascinating. Yeah. I mean, remember, it's all about the story how we talk to ourselves, what we listen
Yeah.
to, how we do it. Remember, it's all about me, but not about me from an ego point. It's about me on how do I respond to situations. Do I become unglued? Do I scream at that person? Do I whatever? So my whole thing is I live in this state of forgiveness 24/7.
Yeah, me too.
You have to. I mean, that's one of
You
the
have
greatest things. Remember, forgiveness and surrender are the same thing. You
oh
cannot
yeah,
forgive unless you surrender. You cannot surrender unless you forgive, right? They
right.
intergraph. So once you get to that point, because then it's forgive for they know not what they do, you look at
Yeah,
everybody as when you examine yourself and you see what a nut you are based on the human condition, then you
yeah.
realize everybody else is doing the very best they can. We all
Oh,
do the best we
absolutely.
can. We wake up every day doing the best we can. That may be horrible for some people where they're having to go rob stores, but that's the best they could do at this time for them
Yeah,
at that point. So we have to forgive that as the human condition part of this that we have to evolve out of. And one of the things that I always try to explain to people too is this is really important through the spiritual journey. The minute you say you understand it, you've missed it because you cannot understand it.
you can't
If
understand.
understanding is an ego is a mental construct. It's a
Oh,
knowing. When you know it, you'll know. It was
yeah,
like that day that was so fascinating. I spent like 2 years reading that Eckhart Tolle book, like for every day, over and over. Every time it got deeper and deeper and deeper. Every time I read it, it was different. And I listened to the guitar in the car for 2 years, and I was like, "Whoa!" By that time, I was feeling like a spiritual guru, man. I want to tell you, man, life is good. I'm up. I feel great. Everything's going good. Then at that April 9th at 10:12 in the morning, I wake up, rub my eyes, and I go, "How did this?" I now know what they mean when they say that. Then I said, this is where it got profound. I, I realized at that point that the voice that was inside of me since I was 5 years old, since I could remember as a kid, and
yeah.
to this point, never changed. It never aged. It didn't talk to me
Never
different.
changed.
It never did anything. It's always been the same. And I went, that's who I am. I'm not the
Yeah,
meat suit. I'm this other thing. And I cried like a baby at that moment because it was like this profound thing. And I just realized you don't die, right? This is
no,
the meat suit goes away, but it's just a different thing. So
yeah.
here's where it got crazy though. I went and I read the Eckhart book again, and I completely missed it. I was 180 degrees off after 2 years after
Explain that.
listening to
So, so
I missed the whole thing. It was everything was ego driven, and it was not about dropping thought, not about seeing reality from a point of no mind, right? Because all
right.
the teaching, all meditations, all the teachings, I don't care if it's the Bible, the Quran, the Tao Te Ching. I mean, I've been through them all,
Yeah,
right? They all
yeah.
point to the exact same thing, this state of no mind, this state of no thought, this state which is basically this presence of now, right? And even the word now is a little bit of a misnomer in this. It's a little crazy. It's hard to get into
Yeah.
that, but it's the closest you can get to kind of explain. But all these teachings point to that state. So after I went through that, and I just realized I had completely missed, because the next time I read the book, all the words changed. They all had different
They
meanings
were
to
all
me.
different. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was like, holy cow. So then, for me, it got into heavy things like, okay, I want to get to the state. So I used to meditate, and I meditate with my eyes open. I'm constantly meditating when
I
I'm
meditate
walking
a
down the
lot.
street.
Yeah. Me
I'm
too.
I'm I'm basically, and that meditation is about shutting down thought and being present and being just this state of total awareness, right? Awareness. Problem is, how do I know I'm aware that I'm aware? Because I just spent 2 years and all this stuff thinking I was aware, and I completely missed it. And that was when I
But you
went,
were learning, but you still were not completely missing it because it brought you to now.
right. But this is my point is be careful. Spiritual ego could be the most dangerous thing there
100%.
is, because it can
100%.
convince you that I'm so together and all
Right.
this. And I'm not saying it's not, it's good. It can be very good, because at that time I was feeling great. I mean, I was felt like I was on cloud nine because I was getting up every day. I'm meditating, doing my Wim Hof breathing. I'm like, I'm doing my whole thing, right? So it's a fascinating, this going inward is the most important thing anybody can do. I don't care. There's nothing more important, because you want to become the sooner you can learn to die before you die,
Yeah.
right? And that's basically full on
Very true.
surrender and giving and letting go and merging with the source is
I,
basically what I would say. It's merging with the source, right? Because
it is.
I'm a
It
total
is.
not.
I
Go ahead.
agree. No, I agree with you so much. And I have to say that, so when I had my first son, I lost one of the twins. So there were
Mm,
two. My oldest son's Duquesne. He works with us and he's amazing. But I had it struck me at that point that like I I lost a child. I'm in a situation, the cancer I had during the pregnancy spread to my whole body. So I didn't know if I was going to live or not live. And I remember at that point understanding the humility and the understanding of I could die tomorrow, but am I already dead? I remember thinking, in a way, I'm already dying to my old self, right? Because at the time I'm like in art and psychology, I'm loving life, everything's pretty perfect. And that made a dramatic change. And I had to really, I want to tell you, there's been multiple points in my life where I've almost shed like my belief in my what I was doing and really went on. I read a book. I have to tell you about this book because now I'm going to read your book. I've read it before. I'm going to read it again. But I read this book when I was in third grade. It was called In His Steps. And I didn't
okay.
really understand it. I read it again multiple times, finally started understanding it more, but it's about basically in this book, it's about Jesus. And
Mm,
I'm like you, I've studied every religion, very, working in different places, understanding this one message. And if you start reading these books, there's this message, right, in all of the books. But in his steps, basically it teaches you not to think like you anymore and to put yourself in someone else's shoes and to shed your beliefs. And I have read that book, I think 11 times. I maybe 12. I read it periodically to remind myself how to basically live and that I don't know what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
But
yeah.
that my heart, and I'm like you, I believe will shed this suit, but our energy and our lives will move on. You said so many things that just hit me today because I think one of the big things that book taught me was to constantly forgive and that I can't do what I'm supposed to do if I don't forgive everyone. And if I judge anyone, then
And
I'm,
yourself.
yeah.
Gotta forgive
So,
yourself too.
oh yeah, which is probably the hardest,
The
right?
human condition, right? We're it's part of what the deal is, right? Yeah.
I love what you're saying, and I love the fact that you are coming from a position where you are. That's such a testimony to people. They need to hear that. They really do, because you reached a position where almost every musician in this world would love to have been in, and you are now in a more important position, in my opinion, to be able to teach people this because they'll listen to you
Yeah,
because
it's
of this whole concept of and reality of yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and how it's all basically connected. And I
yeah.
always described it as string theory, but you described it much better.
Well, remember, at the quantum level, we're just energy.
Yeah,
It's
that's
energy,
all we
right?
are.
There's no, it's
Yeah,
all this. And then, like, this table, this glass table isn't even solid. There's more
no.
space between it than there is stuff.
Oh yeah,
It's a
it's not the
fascinating world we
reality.
live in. Yeah.
Well, I
That's,
get it's fascinating. I wish I could bring you to some of that because I still teach. I used to teach in college and I still do some for different universities. And with Destin will tell you I do different talks, but I love you spreading this message because when I'm talking to people to open a talk and say we really know nothing and we know everything like we're all connected, it's very confusing to people. And you're right, my biggest thing, and I talk about this a lot, I wish you knew me a little bit better. If you did, you would know, I always talk about I have to put my ego aside because yes, I have an ego when it comes to science. When it comes to what I do, I have an ego, so that means I have to walk into an environment and realize I know nothing. Right?
right.
Because if I don't, I won't learn anything because it will be my ego that holds me back. But I think losing a child and having another child sick and then having cancer really brought me to this understanding of all I have is this moment, right? And I better use this moment because the next moment may not be here. And that has hit me so much and so many times. I flew to New York on 9/11. I was there when it happened. I was in Lebanon when Syria bombed Lebanon. Next to the general of the Pakistani army. I was kidnapped when I went over to Tetouan. So I've been through a lot of situations in my life where that next moment may not have happened. And I think you would agree with me when you're living the life that when you're living life, things happen, right? And that means
Yep.
bad and good. It depends on how you define it. But what I
Well,
had to
that's
learn,
it.
it's how you
How do
define
you
it.
define it?
Yeah,
Do I
because like
define it as a bad thing or do I define
or a
it
good
as
thing.
a
Yeah.
good thing? That's
Like
why
I
the
met
key to grace, right?
Right, because I met people in 9/11 when I couldn't get out of that city. I was there, I was working for Johnson and Johnson at the time, J&J Janssen, and I had to stay there. So I made relationships during that time, during a period I can tell you that was very, I had two little kids at home. I was scared to death I wasn't going to make it home, but I had to get over that. And the way I got over it was living in that moment and connecting to people that were there. I love this message that you're telling people because the truth is, some of your best moments in life are during the most tragic moments in your life. You
Absolutely.
just have to
They
live
can be
that.
gifts. I'm
Yeah,
telling you, it sounds crazy, but there's a massive gift in that. I mean, I can honestly say one of the greatest gifts I ever had was I held my mother on her last breath, right? And we had spent because kind of had to take care of my parents for a bunch of years, but I spent me and my mom. That was where we talked spiritual. I got her into reading the books. We did all this stuff, and at that time when that happened, when I was actually holding her, going through the process of that transition, I look back at it was one of the greatest gifts I'd ever gotten. That's why I tell anybody, everybody out there, if you ever get the opportunity to sit with a dying person, that is a massive gift because it's inside that it forces you into a different state. Because at
absolutely.
that moment, I'm not like thinking about, oh, gee, I got my email, I got my stuff I got to do. I mean, you're
Not at
like
all.
basically, you are brought into a state that is so unbelievable, and it was such a gift that trans to feel that transition and go through it.
So
It
true.
was like one of the greatest things ever. And again, big
You don't
part
think
of
of
it was
anything else.
the big part of it for me was obviously after having that kind of what I'll call that epiphany moment on April 9th, 10, 12, and I basically things flipped and I realized you didn't die. It was such a different experience because I had already died, right? As far as I
Right,
was concerned. And this was just my mom, she just changing form, right?
right.
And it was one of the greatest gifts ever. And you can find this in everything, right? And I try to explain also to people like you can always tell how you're doing on your spiritual path because you can tell by how you feel. Like, things go really well. You're up here. Oh man, life's good, man. Big buddy, things happen. All of a sudden you get pounded with something. You're down. Oh, thanks. Life sucks. It's horrible. I can't believe this. Now the question is how long do I go down for? Am I down for 5 minutes? Am I down for a day? Am I down for a week, a month?
Yeah,
The longer you stay down, and then finally something will go good, and then you'll be up again. Well, as you do this, and as you become more aware, you'll go up, and you think, oh, everything's good. Then you get pounded, you go, oh, down, and then maybe it took you a half a day, but now it's like, oh, an hour, I'm back up again, and then it keeps going. And then all of a sudden you get pounded, and then 5 seconds later you flip it, and you're like, okay, it's okay. There's good in here. There's
yep,
something in this that's going to be good for me right now, even though I'm doing it. So you basically switch your thinking. And as you do this, you finally get to the point where you go like this. You start to
yeah,
flatline because whatever
100%.
gets thrown at you, you don't it's how you react. It's how do you
100%.
react? Are you doing it from an act of kindness? Are you thinking it from a point of love, a point of caring? I mean, it could be so many different things. And so inside, I'm telling everybody this suffering can be the greatest gift, but you have to look for it, right? If you
You do.
just, that's that point of like why people, when they get pounded so hard, they finally get down and then they surrender. I don't care. I just can't take it anymore, right? And they'll just go like this, and then their lives will start flipping around because they finally let go of the story. They're surrendering to the isness of it instead of spending all their time thinking about why me, what happened, this is
100%.
horrible, this is this, and all that energy. Because remember, it goes down to energy. It's
It's
like
all
everything.
energy.
And that's
Yeah,
why when I teach startup to companies, I said all I care about is your culture. You will succeed if your culture is rocking. If you got a good idea, it's about the culture. It's about bringing the right energy and the
100%.
people together. Because once you have that momentum, things take off, right? And it's just energy.
It's just the energy. I agree 100%. Like I said constantly, because I dealt with so much cancer research, and a lot
Right.
of that again was personal. I'd gone through it, so I focused my energy as a scientist
Yeah.
on that. But you're takes 17 seconds, and this is a fact. It can take you about 17 to 20 seconds with positive energy to really kind of flip something and to change, because our cells are talking, and people don't realize this, but inside your body, there is a city, it's living. When you die, those cells are going to go somewhere else. That energy is going to be transferred, right? And
Right.
so with negative thinking, if you were negative and we kept talking, and that would somehow become a part of, I would have to be very careful, right? So you really
Yeah.
have to understand that positive energy, just like you have to understand that you're this small piece of a puzzle and everyone else is equally important, right? Like
You're
we're all
always at the center of the universe. That's some good. We're all at the center, always. You can't get away from it.
No. And if every person understood, honestly, Scott, if everyone understood how important they were and their energy, it would change our lives. Everyone got so upset about the pandemic, and I kept saying, this is a change to evolve and be shed the old stuff and be even more wonderful energetically as a country or as a person or as a family, if that's your choice. Or you can choose other things too. Yeah.
Despair.
This
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I'll never forget, because obviously going through this spiritual stuff and things that I where I actually had I'll never forget this moment. It was 2016, something 17, or it was right anywhere. I went and played this gig, and it was about I just finished the gig, jumped in my car. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning. I was driving back from Long Beach back to my home and stuff. I got about 20 minutes. I went to reach over to grab my phone, and there was no phone. And you know what happens when you lose your
Yeah.
phone. Everybody goes,
Yeah.
"Oh, where's my phone? What's happening?" And I thought, "Oh, crud, I lost my phone. I better go back." So I turned around. I went back to the club. And I went in there, pounding on the door, and it was late. It was closed, but luckily the guy came and opened the door. We went through the place. We looked for the phone, couldn't find the phone anywhere. So I turned around, started walking back to my car, and then all of a sudden the guy goes, Mister, is this it?" And he found the phone and he gave it to me. So I got back in the car, and then I went, oh, I just realized it didn't take me over at all. I just completely, the phone was gone. I just turned around, went back. I just, oh, maybe I left it there, whatever. But the point was,
But
is
you
I
didn't get
realized
stuff.
that I didn't do this thing. I actually kind of leveled out, went with the flow of it, just realized it was going to happen, came back, got in the car. And when I got back in the car, I cried like a baby. I could not believe that I was not affected. I thought, it was the greatest moment. I mean, I'll never forget it. I sat there and I cried because I could
Because you
not
didn't
believe
care.
I didn't let
I
it
need
take
to
me over.
reach that moment. Listen, because
Yeah.
I
Eh,
need to, no, I'm
eh,
not lying. You just taught me something, because I'm like, I kind of, you're not going to probably think as highly of me now. I lose my phone because I'm all over the place, and, traveling in different countries is anyway, I will freak out. It's one of those things that I'm like, where's my phone? Where's my phone? But you're right. I shouldn't care about the phone. If I
well,
don't have the phone, there's a moment there. Maybe I shouldn't be having the phone,
well,
right?
yeah, it's interesting. So I had this tested again on me this last year. We were playing Jazz Fest in New Orleans, right? So
Yeah.
we played our gig, and then I had a second gig. And when we're musicians, we go to Jazz Fest. It's like every night we got gigs
Oh,
playing.
yeah.
We're playing with all these bands. It's like this whole thing. So this whole schedule laid out for me. I go there, I play the first gig, and then I go to this second gig that I'm playing that night, and then I lost my phone. So first day in New Orleans, I mean, I just got in that day, went and did our gig, did the thing, and now I've got 4 more days in New Orleans, and I lost my phone. I could not find my phone. I couldn't get a phone because I had two-factor authentication on. So when I went to Apple, every time they send it, it would go to the phone. So I lost the phone. So I had to go. So I ended up missing all my gigs. I just missed all the gigs. I just
What?
ended up because I couldn't get, nobody knew how to get a hold of me. I had no way to get a hold of. I could not get my phone because I needed my Apple ID. It was I had it at home, but I didn't have it with me. So I had nothing to do because everything I had was on the phone, and nobody knew how to get a hold of me to tell me where the gigs and all this stuff was, because I didn't know where the gigs were. Like at the night that the last gig I played that night, the guy said, "I'll text you all the information for tomorrow." Okay, great. Because you don't think about it. It's just going to
Yeah.
get this
Yeah.
information. I know where to go. And so I ended up spending the 4 days walking around New Orleans by myself,
I bet
no
you loved it.
phone. I had the best time.
Oh
I
my
had,
gosh.
and when I got home,
I
I
would have
had,
loved that.
I would,
Sorry,
when
sitting
I
here
got,
with me. I would have loved 4 days without my phone.
I got home, and then I was like, oh, I got to get another phone. And I was like, "Oh, I don't know if I want another phone. This is too good." It took a few days, but it was just a point that just it made me take that inward journey and just surrender to what is. Remember, that's the holy grail,
Yeah.
surrendering to what is,
What
right?
is? Yeah.
And you and it's so another crazy story just to show real quick is I have a friend of mine who is like a big time composer arranger, multiple. He was up for Academy Awards. I mean, big time serious composer. He was his parents, his father had had a stroke and was basically on a machine, and they because they didn't have any paperwork, so they have to keep it going. And even though it was no good, this is going on for a long time now. And then his mom got really ill, and he was suffering. Right, he was so I was on the phone with him like every day, just kind of supporting him and
Yeah.
trying to help him out. So we're on the phone, and he's just like, "Oh man," dude, he's like just so down and so negative, and he wasn't getting any work too. He's just like, I can't get any work, nothing's happening. We're on the phone, all of a sudden it's ring ring. He says, hold on, somebody's calling me. So I'm sitting there, I'm on the phone. Now just imagine, he was like despair of the world. The phone is, I sit there, 2 minutes go by, next thing he comes on the phone, he goes, dude, you can't believe it was Mel Gibson calling me to do his next movie, blah blah blah. Now he's all up, right? He's all pumped, right?
Because of
And I
that.
said, and I just like, listen, what had changed? You're still sitting in the same chair. You
Still
were
the same
talking to
person.
me 2 minutes ago, and the phone rang, and the only thing that changed is what somebody told you, and now you're feeling fine. It's like goes how we identify with that thinking. It's like it's crazy. So we humans are very interesting,
We are.
critters with our human condition.
But you're traveling. Are you going to corporations right now and teaching this so that the
you know,
corporations?
I speak at a lot of conferences, but mostly on Web3 tokenization,
Okay.
tokenomics, crypto, meme tokens, utility tokens. That's my world. But I always take it back to this at some point to leave people with this thing in their head that this is it, right? And
Yeah.
also the fact that when we have this experience together, it's like I played a gig at this. I was in Mexico City, and I did this thing, and we were in this crazy house, and it was this take little jam we did in this place, and it was so powerful, and everybody's in the room, and I just said, it was like, listen, there's 8 billion people on the planet, but us right now, us like 60 people are getting to experience this moment. And it's just such a great thing when you get all that energy and stuff moving in the same direction and people feeling the same thing. So that's my whole thing is I always, you know, I just want to be around that energy that's moving in a
Yeah.
forward direction. When you do that, it just pulls everything along, right?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. It's so important to have that positive energy.
Yeah.
Destin's one of those people that maintains that positive energy
He sure
with what
does.
he does. And I
Yeah.
know that I'm around so many wonderful people. I think the more I've gotten older, and I don't know the reason for, I don't know if I've changed because of different things. I know I've changed. I know I'm like you. There's been times where I'm like, okay, now I just died to how I used to be, and I am completely have learned something different. And I have to say, there's many times in my life where I'm like, I completely did not get that. I did not get that 3 or 4 years ago. Like I can tell you there was something that happened in my life 10 years ago where I didn't want to get out of bed. And my mother was like, and it was really bad in my mind.
I've been
But
there. I've been there.
yeah.
Ooh.
And my mom was like, you can either lay in the bed and feel
Yeah.
sorry for. I have a really great mom, the musician. She
Ah, good.
she was like, you can either lay in the bed or you can get up and raise the kids. This happened. So this happened for one day because you're right. Like actually, it happened for 4 hours. It was 12 o'clock when I decided to get out of bed. But for me, usually I'm up at 5. So I was like, but I had told myself, I'm just letting you know that I wasn't getting out of bed, that I didn't want to get out of bed, that my life was going to be not, I wasn't going to hurt myself. I just thought, this is it. This is horrible. How do I recover from this? How do I make it out of this? Financially, there was issues. Personally, there were issues. And basically, I had to tell myself because I knew you have to get out of bed and you have to make a change now, or
Yeah.
else you're going to stay in this bed and waste a whole day when you could have died when you were 25 from a brain tumor. Because I had had a brain tumor after all that happened with my children. And of course, that decision, and again, this goes back to when I was 25 and 26, was it a tragedy that I lost a child and then I got cancer?
Yeah.
Yes. Was it a blessing? And I want to tell you, Scott, I sometimes feel guilty saying this because I don't want people that have cancer ever to think I think it was a blessing. I don't want to ever hurt someone else because of
Of
what I
course.
say.
But
But
I
for
know where you're
me,
going with this.
it
I
was
know where
life
you're.
changing. It was life
Yeah.
changing because I realized at that moment, and when doctors are like, you might live 3 to 6 months, I have a child. I want to live. And of course, my big thing, and Dustin probably didn't tell you, I'm constantly saying you have to live the life you want, not what someone's told you you're going to live or
Right.
do, because the truth is you only know that moment. And does someone else have the ability to tell you what's going to happen the next day? The answer, by the way, is no. I don't care what doctor it is, what
Yep.
psychologist. And so I really had, that has carried me so many times in my life when I feel sorry for myself, when I have a tragic event, when I realize, okay, I could have even chosen to not get out of bed. I can choose to live every day to the fullest or to be stagnant and to not live that moment. Because really, you're right. And I love that you're saying this. And we will, just so you know, we do have people watch the the Spotify and the YouTube. We have about I have about 6 million followers across social media, not
Wow.
because of who I am, but because we are in so many countries. So
Right.
when you're my age and this old and you work in that many countries for so long, you develop a following. And when you're a white scientist that's in other countries, where
Yes.
you're the only female that you grow a following, but the answer is that now moment is the only moment you have. So you either live that moment and because you have no idea what's happening that next moment. So you're
Yeah.
either there living or hey, listen, or you're choosing not to live that moment.
Well,
It's
see,
what
but when you sit there and say, "I choose," I can't stand. I can't live with myself. Right? Is there two of you? Like that's like what do you mean? I can't live with myself. It's like it's such a weird thing, right? What do you mean?
there's
I
only
can't.
you. You have to.
It's like two of you. It's like it's a strange thing, and that's that separation of consciousness, right? Because
Yeah,
I believe we're right now what we're living through is we're in a war of between conscious and the unconscious, right?
yeah,
It's really, I would call it a good and evil type of thing. I mean, I feel like morals have gotten hijacked, and remember, the egoic mind is very programmable. It can be very
100%.
crazy and make people do all kinds of strange things. But at the same time, I think it's massive awakening that's happening at the same time right now. There's people now are like finally starting to wake up to on a
Yeah,
global basis like we've never seen before. So I think I'm very positive about. I think this is going to be a great thing from a consciousness point of view.
100%.
Yeah, I don't know if humans will be around in 100 years with AI coming in, but whatever consciousness is going to unfold, it's been unfolding for billions of years here. Whether humans are part of it or not, well, I don't even know if that even really matters at the
Well,
end of the
I
day, right?
I say all the time, we're connected to a leaf in the tree. People get really frustrated with me because I'm like, we're connected to someone in Ukraine and Russia and China. And just so everyone knows, our DNA is connected to a leaf on the tree. So I had someone ask me, I was at a conference speaking at a biohacking conference. So they said, so do you think a leaf on the tree has energy that can impact our world? I said, 100%. And they
Yeah,
were like, so you think that a leaf on a tree can communicate with you? And I said, I absolutely do in a different way, but yes.
yeah.
And they were
Well,
like, well, that's kind of crazy. And I go, well, we're
quantum
all
entanglement, right?
we're all tangled up in this energetic you know, bundle. And if you think we're not, then honestly, we are. We really, really are. And we have to care about every single thing. If we think it's not important, like if
Hmm.
we think that there's something less than what we think we are because of our ego, that is not as important. It's not true. We're all very important. And I'm like you, we are at an awakening. I do think it's the conscious and subconscious, and I think that people don't know how to connect that and how to deal with it. But I believe, and I always refer to it as a butterfly. The butterfly goes in the cocoon, it comes out beautiful, right? If
Hmm.
it chooses to, what people don't realize about the butterfly is that butterfly can choose to die in that cocoon and never come out because
Wow.
there's different signaling that happens within that butterfly. So
Mm.
scientifically, that butterfly can choose through the different signaling and the energy not to become a butterfly, but to stay in that cocoon and rot and die.
Wow, that is trippy. That's so interesting, you know. Yeah,
Isn't
it's like
that
three of the
interesting? I
swords,
know.
right? That's why, you know, I'm a full non-dualist, right? I believe that it's all just one thing. I mean, you're
Yeah.
God, I'm God, we're God. The biggest obstacles to God, I try to explain, is the word God, because it creates duality. It creates this thing of something up here, right? So that, remember, because everything just is. It
Yeah.
just is. It's just part of this energy field. It's all part of it. And it's just so interesting how we've created this something out here and me here type of duality, when in reality, like you said, we now know what's wonderful about what's going on in science and quantum and all of that, is all that stuff is getting proven now. What the great everybody's been talking about, it's all being proven in a scientific way, which I think is great for some people because they need science
Some
to
people
get
need science.
they
Yeah.
need
Like
science to get
people,
behind it.
yeah. People would ask me all the time when I went through school, because I was probably one of the few people that did what I did for a living or do what I do. I really believe in God and a higher, a higher mission, a higher calling where we're all energetically connected. Because if you really read about the Bible, or you want to read the Quran, you can read about it, but it talks about this within those scriptures and in those verses.
Yeah,
But everyone interprets it differently. And
yeah,
we're so comfortable putting things like in a house, right? Or a
oh yeah,
box,
yeah.
because we're
People need
just
to really
comfortable.
understand words are just pointers. You
Yeah,
cannot describe what this is. You can only know it. So the words can only point to something that is not be able to be understood, but only known, right? That's the
right.
problem with is because people then take everything literal. You know,
Yes.
it's like, stop and smell the roses. Oh, I mean, stop, no, but
No,
it's the
that's not
point
right.
of
Yeah.
presence, right? That's stating that what happens that moment you take that sniff of something, your mind goes blank and you're there, right? It's that thing. And there's so many things, all the parables and all those things. You've just got to look past the words and find what they're pointing to. And obviously that's the hard part, or the part it's not hard. It's just we make it hard because we make it confusing. Like some people wake up really quick and they just have this I'm there. Makes total sense. Other people, it takes years. It took me years to like going through this and
It took
and
me
and
years. Yeah.
meditating and all that kind of stuff
Yeah.
until you taste it. Like that's the problem with this, like the state of no mind, right? That
Right.
idea, they say going there, but what is it? How do I know I'm in this state? And the only way is because you can feel it. It's a shift. There is a sense of feeling where there is such a sense of peace, because there's nothing to create anxiety or attention, because you're not thinking about it. You're just basically melding and communicating with the source. And so it took me a long, long time, but now I've gotten to the place because I tasted it once. I'll never forget. I was staring at these plants. I was meditating like at these plants and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden thought dropped for the first
Yeah.
time. And this
Yeah.
sense of peace, this thing that just came over me was like, whoa. And then your mind comes on and goes, what was that? And then you're back in,
And
oh,
then if
now I'm
it's back,
stuck back in.
well, I meditate 3 to 4 hours a day. So,
Yeah.
that's a lot, right? And if you ask me, I so when I lose that consciousness, like I usually am thinking about different things, I'm meditating. I can't just lose that consciousness at first. Like
Yeah.
it takes me a while to get there. So I've
Yeah.
been there multiple times throughout my life and then it's so almost harsh when I go back to the reality of like, I know this is going to sound, but I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm praying for my children, praying for people I met that day, for my family, meditating about them, thinking about them, trying to energetically bring people together. And then all of a sudden, and this takes me a couple of hours. That's how I'm not evolved. I'm not Sadhguru.
Yeah. No, no, no. Sorry. I
It's
mean,
Sadhguru, his board of directors that lead that are good friends of mine. And anyway, but I will reach it, and then it's so harsh almost when you come back to wait a minute, what happened? I
yeah.
forgot what I was, but it's because it's so peaceful. And it's
So peaceful.
almost like you don't want to be brought back
Yeah.
to where
Well,
you were. And I'm positively meditating. So I'm not like thinking about a negative thought, right? It's positive, but still it's almost harsh to go back to even that, because that feeling of just being, it's not even a feeling. You're right. It's a whole, it's just your energy is there.
Well, once you taste it, I mean, again, the first thing is, it's like, it goes back to the whole thing. They said, if I had an orange and you never tasted an orange, I could explain to the orange, it's sour, it's sweet, it's blah, blah, all this. but until you taste it, right, you don't know. The first time when that dropped, that was all I needed, because then that gave me the knowledge, or the knowing of what it was I was looking for. Then I figured out the formula, right? And so for me, I'll throw this out at you, what I do, which
Okay.
helps me dramatically in getting to the state. And I do it constantly, it's why I meditate with my eyes open all the time. Is, as let's say, if I'm walking out and I'm out around, I'm looking at something wherever, I put all my attention on the stillness and silence that's surrounding. So if I'm looking at a tree, I might be looking at the tree, but I'm not. I'm looking at the tree, but I'm looking and feeling and looking at the stillness and the silence, putting my attention on that's around everything. So the trees, the wind could be blowing, but if you put your attention on it, there is a complete silence and stillness that sits around all of that. When you do that, you can start to feel, for me, I start to feel the shift until it drops. And it's just the wildest thing. So maybe give that one a try whenever
On the
you're staring,
plane, on the airplane.
and just put it in the
Like,
perfect place. So
yeah,
look at whatever. If you're looking at the couch or the chair in front of you,
yeah.
whatever, look at the chair, but look at the stillness and silence and everything that surrounds it, all the energy. Your attention is on that, not on the chair or whatever you look at.
I
And
haven't
that's,
tried that. I'm going to try that. So let me ask you this. So let's say you're on a plane and there's turbulence, and
yeah.
how do I get my mind to where it's still during that? Does that make sense?
Well, what you do is you use that as you. First of all, I say, oh, okay, there's turbulence. Good, because now it's going to drive me into trying to figure out how to deal with this, right? Which is,
Okay.
remember, everything is about how I'm going to deal with that. So at that
Okay.
point, for me, is I would just, again, I go into this. It's so strange for me. After that 2011 incident, I lost fear of dying. Like it's like so strange. I'm actually more curious about it now.
I'm not scared of dying. That's why I can't understand the plane, because I'm actually not scared of dying. So what am I scared of? Do you know what
We'll
I
see.
mean?
Yeah. Well, remember, it's a thought.
Yeah.
It's a thought. That's the only reason. That's the only reason you're
It's
scared,
just
is
what I'm
because of the
thinking.
thought. It's what you're
It's just what
thinking.
I'm
That's
thinking.
it. Because in reality, you're in the thing. It may be bouncing around, but everything's still okay.
Yeah.
It hit some turbulence. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
the worst things happening. So in those cases, then I would go inward and just try to imagine everything still as possibly can. Stillness and silence around. It could be noisy, it could be everything's happening, but if you put your attention on that stillness and on that silence, that helps to bring yourself back to a more of a place of calm. But just knowing that you're identified with the thinking,
Yeah.
which means you're out of the present moment,
I
because
love that.
you're out of it. Because if that's what's going on, the truth is you're sitting on the plane, it's moving, but it's not all these horrible, fearful things that are going to happen,
Yeah.
and all this and massive things that are going on, right? And so it's a way to drive yourself inward. Use that as a, be thankful for it. That's number one. You have to be thankful for everything that's thrown at you. You just,
That's true. You have to be
because it
thankful.
could have been a lot worse.
It could be a lot worse, and you're just in a moment. You're right.
Yeah.
I'm getting ready to fly to Dubai. I may go to India and see Dustin. He's going to the Catholic Church and doing some
Oh,
stuff there. But
yeah.
I definitely have to be in Dubai. I'm a resident there as well. So let me ask one last question. And this is probably not the question. If you don't want to answer it, you don't have to, of course.
Okay.
Um, when your mother died, and
Uh-huh.
was she scared?
You know, she never felt scared. She never said or admitted that she was scared. She might have been on the inside. I mean, but I don't, that was like, for me, that whole period was really, I got my mom into reading the two books that my two favorite. I'm going to give you the other one. Here's the one you got to go read real quick before I go to my
Okay.
mom. It's
Yeah.
called Reality and Subjectivity, or it's Subjectivity and Reality. I don't have it in front of me. It's like,
We're gonna
but
write
it's
that down.
Dr. David Hawkins, Dr.
Okay.
not Stephen Hawkins, but David Hawkins.
Okay.
It is everybody I've ever turned that book on to always come back to me because the way he speaks, the way he describes things, it's really, really a special book. But anyway, so my mom, we were going through that. That was my thing of getting together with her. We would read the book, we would talk about the things and really kind of take that thing. So I think that really helped her
Yeah.
get through it in a different way. Now, my father was different. My father was like Peter Pan, right? I unfortunately I wasn't there when he passed, but I went through the whole period because I was taking care of him all the
Yeah.
time, right? He did. He was more. He was just a go with the flow kind of human in general, right? He was. We called him Peter Pan. He just, he was the nicest human and just always got by hardest. He was got. That's why I became an entrepreneur. We had boat businesses, lighting businesses, candy businesses. He was one of the inventors of the wah wah pedal, the famous wah wah pedal, the guitar. But we've
Wow.
had all these things throughout my life. But he didn't take that inward journey like that. He was sort of already built into it, kind of just who he was, but never
Yeah.
really took it like I did. And then my mom. So that was something we have. So for her, I don't know on my dad's side as much. I mean, I could see that he was definitely a little more fearful
Yes.
just about the whole process.
Yeah.
You could see that. And that's tough. No question. That's a tough one.
It's a gift. I hope people that listen to this will read the books and then listen to what you said, because I think it's such a gift what you're sharing with people. And I think some people are on this journey right now, but if they're not, they need to be on the journey to understand.
Nothing more important. I'm telling you, everybody out there, there is nothing
You
more
need to write a
important
book about it.
than that inward journey.
Have you written a book about it?
No, but I actually, which is so funny, I used to, I came out of the gaming business. So I had a gaming company once. So I really got into thinking about, game theory and how to, and so I
Yeah.
started putting this thing together, Enlightenment, the ultimate game, and started to build actually an infographic, which
Right?
was the steps to this game of enlightenment. How do I find out who am I really? What am I, right? And so I
Right.
just put down these particular tasks that I did on a daily basis, just to start this process to start going inward. Because remember, not everybody's ready for it. Some people are,
Right.
they get to a point where they're ready. Some people, they're just getting started, and then it may take them getting pounded a few times to make them go, wait a minute, what's going on? And look, or have a
Yeah.
situation like you had with, with health issues and things like that. And so it's just life is a very interesting ride.
It's a very interesting ride, but you've accomplished in our world something that everyone respects. And with that, I say this all the time, and I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. You're judged according to what you know. And what I mean by that, when you've achieved where you've achieved, and even though equally we're all equal, you have an ability to touch so many people. So thank you for being on this podcast, because people will watch it. And I told you our audience is very international. And I'd love to, I'm going to try to put a link to whatever you want us to. And then I want to play some of your music during the podcast. We have one of our Marty, who's over marketing, is in the office right now, listening to the podcast. I think everyone, if they could have, would have been in here to listen to you. But I want to thank you, and I hope to get to meet you in person. And I
Yes,
I mean that I really enjoyed talking to you.
back at you. And first of all, I'm so happy we had this conversation, because usually it's about, oh, your music career, Pink Floyd. What was it like to play with Pink Floyd? What's
Yeah,
the music? Blah, 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 blah. This is the conversation I care about.
thank
And
you. I
so to
love this
have this
conversation.
opportunity, I had no idea what we were going to talk about coming on today. And so having this be the conversation, you just made my day. My eyes are water. I'm very thankful to
You
be
made
here.
my day. I have one last thing to tell you. You don't know this, but every time I do a podcast,
Mhm.
I meditate and pray. And people that work with me, I think, know this. Every time I do a speech, anytime I walk in a room, that I will be in that moment. And whatever is supposed to happen in that moment, it will happen. And then it's not me, that it's for
Yeah.
the greater good of what we're supposed to be doing. And so I kind of lose why I'm there and I tune into what the purpose is. So hopefully, I know today we were both present 100% in this conversation. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. It means a lot to me. It makes me want to cry too. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you, everybody out there, whoever's listening to this. Take
You're
that
going to
inward,
get a lot, and I'm going to
take
send
that
you.
inward journey.
That's right. And I'm going to send you some gifts from me. And then when I meet you, I'm going to give you a great big hug. So thank you so
Ball.
much.
All right, my friend. Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.